So right here, I'm inside of the documentation for logging, and you can find this link in the description of this video to get more information about logging. So when it comes to logging, we have a couple of frameworks such as log4j, SLA4j, logback, and others. So Spring Boot by default uses logback for logging. So as I said, logging, it's very important and you should really be logging when building applications. If you go to production, then there is no system out there today that has no logging in production. So learning how to use logging properly, it's really important. So let me go ahead and show you how to use logging with Spring Boot. So if I open up IntelliJ, and right here, let's go ahead and open up the customer service class. So with logging, you can actually use it really throughout your code base, and you need to make a decision when to use logging, right? So let me just show you how to basically get a logging instance that you can use to log throughout your class. So in here, let's go ahead and say private and then final. And then here, I'm going to say static and then logger. And the logger that we're going to pick is SL4j. So you can see that this is actually an interface. And the cool thing about being an interface is that we can then switch implementations if we decide to switch the logging framework. So here I'm going to say equals to and then logger and then factory dot and then get and then logger. And in here, let me just put this on a new line because my font is super big. And then in here, what I'm going to do is basically the get logger. Basically, we have to pass the class that we want to log, right? So customer service and then dot class. So this will be the pattern throughout your code base. So if you want to log in your classes, you pretty much have the logger and make sure that it's static, right? So static and final. And in here, we're saying that now we have a logger that we can use through our code base. So if you want, for example, to log, so let's say that you wanted to log inside of your exception. So let's open up the exception. And then we have the exception handler. So let's say here we want to log, for example, right? So in here, what we would do is, so here I'm going to say private, final, and then static. So static, and then logger. So make sure it's the interface. And this will be logger equals to, and then logger, and then factory dot, and then get logger. And I'm going to press shift control space. So I get auto completion there. So you can see that code completion. And then there we go. Now we have another logger that we can use within this class. So let me actually go back to customer service. And in here, let's say that you want to log, for example, just before find all, right? So here, let's go ahead and say logger. So we have our logger, and now I can say dot, and then we have these different methods. So if you want to log an info, you say logger.info. If it's an error, you say error. If it's a debug, so if you have a logger specifically for debugging purposes, which then you can switch off later, you can use it as well. And you can see like is debug enabled, some information about whether certain types of methods are available, right? And trace as well, warn. So if you want to log warnings, and you can see that it's super simple. So here, let's say logger.info, and then here I'm going to say, so get customer was called. So technically this logger doesn't give us much, right? So it doesn't give us much information about, and I'm really just showing you how to use the logger, right? So here, let's say logger and then dot, Oh, actually, let's just basically here. So where we throw the exception. So in here, let me actually remove this lambda. So I'm going to say expand. And then here, I'm going to say or else throw. And just for the sake of it, let's just say logger. So logger dot and then error. So this is an error. And then here, what I want to basically, let me just extract this to a variable. And let's say that we want to log the not found exception. So not found exception dot, and then let's say to string, for example, right? Or we can even do something better. So here we can say, let's say error, and then I'm going to say get customer, error, get customer, like that, error in, and then getting customer. I think is much better, getting customer. And we can use these curly brackets here. So this is for templating, and then I want to say comma and then ID. So I'm going to pass the ID there, and then comma, and then just like that, right? So you can see that this ID will be populated in here. So also if I press command and then P, you can see that we can pass the throwable, right? So here I can say comma and then the not exception. So this is the actual throwable, and there you have it. So you can see it's super simple to use logging. And next, let me go ahead and start the application and show these loggings in action.